Here's my bit of wisdom here, Cory. You need to get honest with yourself and figure out how much you want to spend and how flexible you can be. That's another important piece here because want and need are two different things.
Welcome to Upticks with Jake Falcon, founder and CEO of Falcon Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, we help high net worth individuals overcome financial complexities. We do this by enhancing financial literacy and discussing topics in a language free from industry jargon. Join us as we help explain exactly what having a solid financial plan means as Jake draws from years of experience in helping hundreds of individuals get financially organized and focused on their goals. We hope you find Upticks educational, entertaining, and shareable. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back to Upticks with Jake and Cory. Cory, welcome back to the show.
Jake, thank you for having me.
All right, Cory, I got to share with you. I did a thing, and I took my wife on vacation. So credit to me.
Credit to you indeed. Let's hear about it.
So yeah, I told the listeners on the show last week that I was headed to Boston and Newport, Rhode Island. Rachel and I did all the things, did a lot of walking, ate a lot of seafood. I played golf. Newport Country Club, Cory, this place is awesome. They didn't have irrigation. They don't have irrigation. So they just water the greens in the tee boxes by hand. Very old school, old money club. Played the first U.S. Open ever on this golf course. And then went to the library, did typical bookish things. We had a great time, though. You've been to Boston, right?
I have. Real quick, when was the first U.S. Open, though? I didn't ask you that question. When was it?
I should know that. I think it might have been late 1800s. Maybe
Is
early
that right?
19...
Okay.
No. Yeah, I don't know. Late 1800s, early 1900s, probably.
Okay.
And, so this course is
1895.
Old. There we go. 1895, Cory. I don't even know who won.
Friday, October 4th at Newport Golf Club, 1895.
Yeah, and this place is old. I loved it, though. It's so traditional, right? Very traditional,
Yep.
Very old school, very classy, very friendly
Good.
staff. Beautiful clubhouse. This thing is like a mansion right on the water there. So
it looked pretty neat. I'm glad you guys had a good time.
Yeah, we did. Like I said, had a good time. I'm not much of a vacation guy. I like to work. I like to play golf in Kansas City. But Rachel gives me a hard time because I don't like to travel, Cory. And every year it feels like I end up traveling more than she does. So
yeah, I believe that.
Somehow we got to reverse this so that
get it moving in the other direction.
More.
That's good.
I know. We need to get her on more trips and me on less trips. I'm happy to stay at home with Einstein. What about you? What's new with you?
There's not too much new here, Jake. Cassie and I actually just watched a documentary that we enjoyed. It was based on it was actually the creator of The Sopranos. It was about him, David Chase. And it was pretty interesting, basically, that, when that TV show first came on, that was pretty groundbreaking in that it was a lot different than what had been on network TV. So that was pretty interesting. And I'm actually reading a book right now too, Jake. I don't know if you've ever read this. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. Have you heard of this book?
No, I thought you were reading The Wager.
I'm bouncing around between several, but the one that I read most recently, or the one that I have open right now that I've read most recently, is this book, Man's Search for Meaning. It was actually written by somebody who spent, Viktor Frankl is the author, and it is largely about a week or two experience that he actually had in Auschwitz in a concentration camp in World War II.
Wow.
Pretty fascinating to read, though, and pretty powerful and meaningful, actually.
Well, thank you. No, I haven't heard of that. It sounds very interesting and fascinating. I got another recommendation for our audience and for you. I watched that show. Well, first off, where is that Sopranos show on? Is that on like HBO?
It's on HBO or a Max, I guess is what it's called nowadays. Yep.
Max. And I haven't seen all the Sopranos. Do I need to have seen all the Sopranos to appreciate the documentary? Probably.
No, but I think you would definitely appreciate it more if you had. How about that?
Fair enough. Rachel and I just finished this show called Chaos. I think it's on Netflix. You heard of that one?
Only from you, I think. You guys liked it, right?
Good. Oh, yeah. We loved it. Really good show. Highly recommend it. It's kind of about like Greek gods, and it's got some famous actors in it. Anyways, it's good. Check it out. Chaos. Pretty good one if anyone's looking for it.
I'll do it.
All right. Before we go in today's headlines, though, Cory, we got some listener suggestions. And actually, I wanted to start with something. I got this from a book, actually, that I'm reading right now about kind of like it's his finance blogger. He put his blogs in a book and then put his thoughts on it. I think that's where I got this, or I listened to it on a podcast. I don't remember. But anyways,
Yeah.
I want to discuss this with you. I want to discuss people worrying about market crashes. So inevitably, I've been doing this 18 years. Inevitably, when the stock market crashes down 10, 20%, 5% even sometimes, our phones and email bells start to go off. And we have some nervous Nellies out there that get scared. And my point of this, though, Cory, is that anyone shouldn't worry about market crashes as long as they don't have money in stocks that they need anytime soon. And this may sound obvious to our listeners or our viewers, but I think people forget about this all the time. And so my question to you, Cory, is that we use Upticks as a platform to enhance financial literacy. How can we convince people that when the market crashes, it doesn't matter? How can we change people's perspective there? Or maybe we can't, and that's job security for you and I. What do you think there?
So the latter, what you just described, maybe we can, and it's job security for you and I, is definitely my bias, Jake, in the direction that I lean. I think, though, to address this, we use this platform, right, in this podcast, in this show, to talk about it in client meetings. We highlight this in our communications. The fact of the matter is, I think that people have so much access to information coming at them from a million different directions all the time that, you can kind of pick and choose what you tune into. But, my perspective is that what goes on the market on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis is much more everyday news, it seems like, than it used to be. So the fact of the matter is, I think that people are just dialed into it more. But my observation is that these cycles almost seem like they've gotten shorter, Jake, and that the market seems like it works through a narrative in 4 to 6 weeks, that people that were concerned a month or two ago about a recession now expect the economy to continue to expand, and vice versa. The point there is, headlines are headlines, noise is noise, it's signal is signal. And I'm there with you in that we don't want people to worry about what the stock market does, because that's not where their short-term money is invested. But I also think that people just worry about what the market does, regardless of what you and I say, Jake. That's my opinion.
Right. And I think people think in straight lines, and this is just human nature, that when they think it's going to go down, they think it's going to go down forever to zero. Some people actually think it'll go to zero.
Right.
Which is the most absurd.
Yeah.
It's the most absurd thing to ever think that, by the way. Like, individual companies can go to zero, but if you think the whole stock market's going to go to zero, you are absolutely insane. Now, for compliance reasons, can this happen? Of course it can. Anything can happen. The earth could blow up.
That's right.
Right?
Or the sun. Yep, that's right.
The sun probably will one day, right? But
Yep.
My point is, I just want to enhance financial literacy. I want people to understand that when a market crashes, all that means to us is it's a buying opportunity. That's it. That's all that means to us. Do I like it? No, not at all. Just because I don't like to see my clients' accounts down, just like they don't like to see them down. But am I worried about a client's financial plan because of market correction or crash? No, I'm not, because the whole plan, usually, this is not every client's the same, but most clients, we want at least 5 or 10 years worth of money that they need to access, not in the stock market. So
yeah,
what the stock market does today, it doesn't matter to them. Doesn't matter.
That's right, Jake. And I think that sometimes too, we can confuse volatility with risk, right? Not inherently the same thing. So I think exactly to the point that you're highlighting here today, if the short-term money is not invested in stocks, then the short-term money is not exposed to the same market risks that people may feel like they are. So I do think just, the volatility and the nature of the market moving higher and lower each day, and confusing that for risk is something that we need to be careful of.
All right. Well, thank you, Cory. And I know we have another listener who brought up a few good points. So go ahead, Cory, kick us off with a few of these other points.
Yeah, the first comment from a listener here, Jake, was around something you and I talked about on the show, which was asking a poll question of, what does someone value more, their freedom or their security?
Yeah, so we can't allow comments on our YouTube video because of compliance. They don't have any way to archive it. So what I'd love people to do, Luke's going to get mad at me, Cory, but I'm going to do it anyways. Okay. I would love for our audience to email Luke at falconwealthadvisors.com, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear, what do you value more, freedom or security? Because I think it's an excellent question, and I think there isn't a wrong or right answer. But if our listeners, we're getting over around 1,000 people on YouTube, and plus whatever listen to our podcast. I'd love for you to email Luke at falconwealthadvisors.com and just let him know. I value freedom. I value security, whatever it is. Maybe a one sentence reason. I would love to hear that. And maybe next week, Cory, we can talk about it a little bit more on the show. I think it's the best way to poll for our audience.
Great question.
That's a tough one. For which one do you? Well, we'll wait, Cory. We'll make everyone tune in next week, and we'll share what we value. So let's add this to the doc for next week, and you can just put the poll results, and then Cory and I will share a little teaser there, Cory, for the audience.
I like it. All right, good. So from the same listener also made a comment, Jake, back to worrying about markets, right, and worrying about risk in the markets, finding purpose in retirement. Some of the things we talk about on the show, Jake, that this listener highlighted something for people to consider as far as mental health goes is something called laughter yoga. Have you ever heard of this, Jake?
I know, I've never heard of it. What is laugh yoga?
So it's something you can get certified in. It is enjoyable and entertaining, according to the listener that chimed in on this. But I looked this up. It's pretty interesting. It is quite literally yoga that revolves around laughter, humor, health, happiness, world peace is actually the global movement for the Laughter Yoga International, believe it or not.
Now, how do they practice this? This is like fake laughing? Are you doing yoga and laughing?
I don't know enough yet about it. I'm going to have to do a little bit more research into laugh yoga myself.
Have you heard? I was talking to a client the other day and they did goat yoga. Have you done that one?
No, but I've heard of this.
Yeah. And I think there's somewhere around Kansas City that does it.
Okay.
They said it was cool. I don't, if I remember correctly, they might've said it's not something they'd probably ever do every week, but it's cool to do. I think just being around nature and these fun goats, but you're sitting there doing yoga with a goat. I don't know. Laugh yoga. I think yoga in general is good. Again, this is not go talk to your medical professional. I'm not giving you any health advice on the show, but I think yoga is probably not a bad thing. And if you can laugh and do yoga, doesn't sound like the worst thing either. So I appreciate our audience member sharing this. You got one more, Cory?
I do. Yes. Also, the question was asked so the listener that sent this commentary and said, would be curious to hear the financial economics of leasing versus purchasing again from Jake and Cory. He commented, I'm a purchase guy normally like Jake is, but if the price is half the cost of purchasing and with battery distance and charge time limitations, I still worry about an EV because I can fill up anywhere in about 10 minutes or less with gas. So first, Jake, let's break this down real quick into two parts.
Well, he's talking about a car, right? He's talking about a car.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, there was an article attached to this around leasing of electric vehicles. Also, the economics around purchasing versus leasing a vehicle, more broadly speaking. So let's start there, Jake. Let's talk about purchasing versus leasing and the economics there. What's your perspective on this?
I think he's probably right about the math, but I don't know how common it is. I don't think it's half to lease versus purchase. I think somebody told me the break even. I don't look at this a lot, but maybe 7 years, 10 years. I think 10 years would be an appropriate. If you're going to drive a car for 10 years, probably makes sense to buy it. Again, borrowing, depending on what you buy and how much you spend and when you pay it off, what the interest rate is, all these other factors. I don't think there's a wrong or right answer. Ultimately, it comes down to your financial plan. If your financial plan works with you leasing for the rest of your life, then by all means lease it. Because here's the deal. Most all of us, not everybody, but most all of us are going to have a car and drive it until our 90s, hopefully, or beyond, right? Like, do you know anyone that doesn't have a driver's license? That's of
Not
age.
off the top of my head.
I'd known one person my whole life. My grandma, believe it or not, my grandma on my dad's side never had a driver's license. And my grandpa would drive her to and from everywhere. She never drove a car in her whole life.
Wow.
But that's very rare, right? So my point is, between two of us, we know one person. We know a lot of people. So,
right.
So my point is, the car is always going to be an expense. It's always going to be there. It's kind of like electricity, water, clothes, food. Now, you might live in Boston and take the subway or whatever. So that's a different story. But if you live in Kansas City, you're probably going to have a car. If you live in Texas, you're probably going to have a car. So, again, I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think if you're buying a new car, though, every few years, I would argue that's probably a losing game because cars depreciate typically. So you're buying something, maybe you don't even pay it off. It's become less in value. Then you're trading and you're never really getting ahead of it. Whereas if you buy it and you pay it off, and then you're driving around for 4 or 5 years with no car payment, that'll allow you to catch up a little bit. That's just my perspective. What do you think?
I agree with most of that perspective. I do agree with that, Jake. The piece that I just want to add to it, though, that I should attach to this is that I do think the question was largely coming from a place of electric vehicles and the article that was shared around this, Jake. And there was an article in Bloomberg recently that talked about how cheap electric vehicle leases are helping dealers move unwanted cars. And it is pretty fascinating to look at the data and to see how much electric vehicle leases are up in just the last few years. And there's a number of factors that contribute to that. But what's interesting is that BMW, Jake, almost 90% of their vehicles in 2024, electric vehicles in the United States have been leased versus purchased. 90%, which is a huge number. It's interesting though.
Hold on. You said BMW?
Yes.
In
Electric vehicles.
Oh, electric
in the United
vehicle.
States.
I wonder
almost
why
90%.
that is. Do you think people don't trust the battery? Like they don't want to have to replace batteries? You think that's what it is?
Yes. I mean, there was actually somebody who was quoted in this article that said that electric vehicles and leasing them is appealing to customers who like the idea of electric vehicles but aren't ready to make a long-term commitment to an evolving technology. And that buying an electric vehicle can be risky if battery technology or the market demand for electric vehicles changes and the value of those vehicles change too. So just an interesting perspective on this. But I think leasing...
That's only one. Hold on. I got a client who bought a Tesla. Now, this is not an endorsement for Tesla, but he bought a Tesla before they were mainstream. And he loves that thing. And it served him and his family well. So I think because these battery cars have gotten more mainstream, there have been more incidents of issues with them, maybe. But my point is, I don't think you have to lease an electric car if you want an electric car. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead.
Right. Absolutely. It sounds like, though, the automakers of these electric vehicles, Jake, have continued to attach incentives to them just to move them, which is pretty interesting, too.
Well, that's right. Because I don't think they've been fully adopted. Now,
Correct.
This may sound a little crude, but I am an oil and gas guy. Yeah. I'm also for saving the planet. Don't get me wrong. So I think there's responsible consumption, but I am not a huge electric vehicle guy. I'm an oil and gas guy. But I think these car companies, to try to get more battery operated cars on the road, are smart to get them out there. Get them out there cheap. The more people, are addicted or have become used to using, like, for example, my iPhone. I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to go get an Android. Right? Are you?
Right. No.
I'm not getting an Android. I'm used to Apple. Is it better than Android? I have no idea. Probably not, actually. I hear a lot of good things about Androids. I'm not going to go change. I'm used to the Apple. So get these people addicted to your electric car. Get them addicted to your car, then they'll be electric vehicle owners or leasers forever. I don't know. Not a bad strategy.
Yeah, you got to get them in one first, right? You got to start with one.
Right. We test drove that Tesla. Remember, you almost bought a Tesla. We test drove that sucker.
Yeah, I think I had a lot more fun test driving it than actually considering buying it. But yes, you're right. That was, Jake, that was probably like 10 years ago.
I know. It was a long time ago.
Crazy.
And it was a cool car. It was a cool car then, and they're still cool. They're still cool. So there's nothing wrong with them. It's just, again, what you want, what flavor you want.
Yep.
So, all right, good. All right, let's, before we dive into today's topics, I want to thank our audience, Cory. Our subscriber count continues to grow. Please like and share our content. Give it a thumbs up, 5-star review. Again, we're recording Upticks live here to enhance financial literacy. All right, Cory, we'll play ball. Hopefully Luke will add that sound effect in here. Let's kick us off.
All right, Jake, how much do I really need to retire?
All right. So again, remember, full disclosure, this show is not advice. This article was spitting out a lot of advice I didn't agree with. They said, here's some of their examples. They said 80% of your pre-retirement income, I think this also meant pre-tax. So 80% of your gross income pre-retirement. I disagree. 10 times your salary by age 67, I disagree. Or the 4% rule, meaning draw down 4% of your retirement assets, which again, I disagree with it. I don't agree with any of these. There's so many other factors that come into play in retirement. Instead, here's my bit of wisdom here, Cory. You need to get honest with yourself and figure out how much you want to spend and how flexible you can be. That's another important piece here, because Want and need are two different things. And if you want to live your go-go years, on the high life and travel and cruise and do all these things, then you have to understand you may need to be flexible, meaning you may need to cut your spending later, or you may need to cut your spending for other reasons. Another point in this article, Cory, and I want to hear your thoughts. Can you oversave for retirement? And I think you can. You can oversave in the wrong type of account, such as like a pre-tax 401k. Because if you do this, you may cause yourself to have a major tax issue later in life. Again, ultimately for me, it comes down to frequent financial planning meetings with our financial planners and alignment with your purpose and your goals. To me, that's what matters the most. I appreciate the article. I don't appreciate giving people cookie cutter advice. So again, I don't think anybody should take this 80%, 4%, 10 times your salary as advice. I think you need to build a financial plan. Then I think you need to update and review that plan at least once a year. And then you need to understand, how much do I need? And then how much can I afford, and how flexible can I be in between? Any thoughts on this?
That sounds like the way to retire right, Jake. You should write a book on that.
Oh, thank you. It's been a while since we talked about my book right here, Cory. Amazon, #1 bestseller.
There it is.
Retiring Right. Get your copy today.
You set it up too perfectly.
I did set up. Get your copy today. It's out there on Amazon. Easiest way to order books, probably out there on Amazon. I'm working on trying to get in some local bookstores in Kansas City. If any of our audience is around the country and you want this in your local bookstore, let me know. I'll send out some copies. Want to get that out there more. But thank you, Cory. It's 150 pages. It's not the end-all, be-all deal. It's a guide to get you thinking about retiring right.
That's right.
Good one, Cory. Anything else before we move on?
No, I don't think so.
All right, here we go, Cory. All right, here's next. What's left to be ETF'd?
Yes, this was a fun one, Jake. So ETFs are exchange traded funds. And there is an ETF for nearly everything. But the author of this article said the good ones are rare. There is now, Jake, even an ETF for stocks that get kicked out of other ETFs. And there are also giant firms with private equity funds that are developing ETFs to hold non-traded, another word for that would be illiquid investments. And here's a few facts, Jake. Let me break this down for you. As of August 29th, 2024, there are 3,337 US listed exchange traded funds. Now, at the end of 2023, there were 2,272 listed companies on the New York Stock Exchange and about 3,400, a little more than that, on the NASDAQ, which is interesting that there are as many ETFs as there are individual stocks listed in the market. Now,
Wall Street, Cory. Packaging products.
Right.
Go ahead.
That's right. And I appreciated this too, Jake. There was a quote from the chief executive of a firm called Alpha Architect that said, if you're trying to put illiquid stuff in an ETF, it's never going to work. And he adds, we don't see a lot of true innovations. If you want to put triple levered Zimbabwe swaps in an ETF, that's not innovation. So there's 52 exchange traded funds, Jake, 52 that are linked to the returns of one single stock, according to FactSet. And the bigger point from this was to remember that good innovations are rare when new financial products are designed and rolled out regularly, and to be careful chasing whatever the new hot thing is.
I know. What
do you think about that?
It's a joke. It's a joke, and it's scary. The bigger problem, I think the bigger problem than these ETF things is the advisors that are pushing them on their clients. Because here's the problem, Cory. People hire an advisor typically for one or two reasons. One, they are humble enough to say, I'm not smart enough to do this. I was an engineer. I was a software developer. I was a salesman, whatever. I was a doctor. I was a lawyer. I'm not a
teacher,
financial...
Whatever, exactly.
A what? Teacher.
I said a teacher.
A police officer. I was not a financial services professional. So I'm going to hire you, and I want you to do it. So that's number one. Number two, maybe they are savvy individuals. They know a little bit about investing. But they don't want to spend the time doing it, right? So it's like either A, they claim they don't have the experience and the knowledge, or B, they don't have the time or the desire. So they come to guys like me and you. And by the way, there's like, what is there, 200,000 or 300,000 people calling themselves financial advisors in America.
Hundreds of thousands.
Too many, by the way. And I'm not saying that because I'm on the inside. I'm saying that because they are far too many different types, shapes, forms, and people don't really understand. They think we're all the same and we're not. And so then you get these uneducated financial professionals. Believe it or not, there's uneducated financial professionals that are there just to push people into products. And that's what's scary to me. And so again, think about it. You're a financial advisor. You're not, this is you. We don't use products, or we try not to whenever we can. Think about it though. You're a financial advisor. You sit back, the wholesaler comes to you and says, I got this new triple leverage thing. You should put all your clients into it. It's going to be really cool. Well, now you get something to talk to your clients about. So then you're going and pitching it. And it's dangerous. I don't know when it's going to stop. I don't know that's a real question. When does all this stop?
See, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one, because it seems like, just the number of ETFs, Jake, that are listed have almost doubled in the last 2 or 3 years. I was just looking at the data this morning and I was just shocked to see the number of funds. But what's so interesting about all of this is in a lot of ways, Jake, you talked about playing golf earlier at Newport Country Club. We've talked about things that are traditional and things that are more modern, that are different. I think the main takeaway from a lot of this is that, following what is traditional, oftentimes things that are traditional because they've worked. And in the modern world of finance, if there's all kinds of newfangled products that somebody can invest in, sure, there's a market for that, but it doesn't mean that you need to own any of those things in order to retire right, in order to accomplish what you're trying to.
Right. This is my deal. If you're going to hire an advisor, you don't need to use products. And if your advisor, that's the only way they know how to do it, then I would seek out a different advisor. That's my opinion. Again, at Falcon Wealth Advisors, we like to go and pick individual stocks, bonds, and options for approved clients ourselves. We're not going to use somebody else. We're not going to use another party, because what we're doing is we're losing control. We are increasing fees. And many times you are losing transparency. And I don't know why that's good for any client, any of those things. Any one of those three things aren't good for a client, much alone many times, Cory, it's all three.
Yeah, you're right.
So again, steer clear of those crazy, crazy products. All right, we got time for one more, Cory.
All right, Jake, let's do it. The state of America's wallet.
All right, this is a little long one, but I thought it was a very fascinating article, Cory.
Okay.
Here goes. A study about Americans, money and Americans. So this article claims that Americans have more money in the bank than they did in 2019, even after adjusting for inflation, and just slightly less credit card debt relative to income. But what's interesting, Cory, is they generally don't feel better off financially than they did 5 years ago. This was before the pandemic, inflation, and rising interest rates. It also says Americans make more money than they did at the end of 2019, even after adjusting for unusually high inflation since then. What do you think about that real quick before I move on?
It's interesting. I'm more than anything, Jake, I'm interested to hear what's coming after that.
All right. So this wage data is adjusted for inflation using the Consumer Price Index, and it shows that real median earnings were about 3.5% higher in the second quarter of 2024 than they were at the beginning of 2019. And so it says from 2020 to 2022, year-over-year pay growth was highest for the bottom 25% of earners. This is according to the Atlanta Fed. Also says Americans carried an average of $74 in cash in their wallet. Cory, how much you carry in your wallet? You want to share that?
Probably $100 to $200, typically.
Yeah, I try to keep a couple hundred. I don't know why, but I do. It goes down and up.
74.
Average. It was only $60 in 2019. Weirdly.
Okay.
Account balances fell from pandemic highs faster for lower earners. Makes sense, right? So lower earnings were getting stimulus checks and not spending money. And then, of course, when things open back up and things are more expensive, it hurts them more. So to me, that made sense. In February, the median balance for the bottom quarter of earners was $1,160 versus $8,143 for the top 25%. That's according to JP Morgan Chase Institute. It says the American saving rate was down to 2.9% in July, less than half of what it was in late 2019. This reflects the confidence people have as a result of higher home prices, stock prices, and income from bonds. That's what this chief economist at Apollo Global Management said, or Apollo. Americans have racked up more credit card debt in the past few years after paying down balances during the early part of the pandemic. Makes sense, right? Now we have stuff to buy when people are traveling. They're racking up credit card debt. The average credit card debt for those who carry balance rose to over $6,000, and that's up from $5,800. So not huge. None of this stuff's crazy. Credit card debt as a share of income is now just about even with what it was at the end of 2019. But higher interest rates, which have climbed to 23% from 17%, make it more expensive to carry that debt. So it's another reason to pay off your credit card. I got more here, Cory. The price of a car and the cost of borrowing money to buy one have shot up since 2019. The average annual percentage rate on a loan for a new car was 7.1% in August. That's high, I think. Up from 5.4% at the end of 2019. So more reason to lease for you, Cory. All right, I'm finishing up here. Got a few more things. It's good, though, right? The costs of car ownership have similarly accelerated. Insuring and, God forbid, repairing a vehicle have become significantly more expensive lately. The price of gas is down, though it's still 20% higher than it was at the end of 2019. Rising costs have inspired many drivers to get more years of life out of their car. So again, people are driving cars longer. They're driving on the average age of the car is at 12.6 years, up from 11.8. The median mortgage payment is $1,520. The monthly payment on a purchase of a median priced home in July with an average mortgage rate was $3,000. In 2019, it was $1,500. So yeah, you know all this. The cost of home ownership have also jumped, particularly the price of insurance. The median annual home insurance premium was $1,765 in the first quarter, up from $1,164 in 20. So $600 more bucks a year. But here's to wrap it up. But some relief might be coming to the housing market as mortgage rates could drop, as the Fed appears poised to cut rates like they did. That could eventually give some homeowners a chance to refinance and many renters a shot at buying a home. I don't think this is earth-shattering information. I thought it was interesting, though. What do you got? Anything on that?
Well, at first, Jake, when you said the state of America's wallet, I thought this would maybe quite literally be about finances of the United States and the Treasury Department. But with that being said, for individuals, no, I don't think there's anything that stands out too much. But other than it gets a little confusing, Jake, when you're talking about wage data that's adjusted for inflation using the CPI and real median earnings, like our real median earnings would buy groceries, right, or pay for insurance. And I think that sometimes that's probably just the inherent disconnect that there seems to be. But it is interesting information. What's your take on it? Anything?
Yeah, I think the takeaway here is to be vigilant with your wallet.
Yep, that's good.
Know how much cash you got in your wallet. Know what your mortgage is. Know all the interest is on your credit cards, car payments, all that stuff. How much money are you making in your savings account? I didn't even talk about that. But again, we're still getting through our external partner 5.25% on a high yield savings account. So go get yourself a high yield savings account. Make sure it's FDIC insured. So my takeaway is to check in on this stuff.
Yep.
And if you don't want to check in on it, hire us and we'll walk you through it and we'll talk.
That's
we'll talk with you. And our planners are equipped to have those conversations with our clients. So I know we went over a little bit, Cory. Thank you so much for joining me this week.
Of course.
And thank you all for tuning in. We hope all of you have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Upticks. Click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. Also, be sure to visit our website, falconwealthadvisors.com, and click the Contact Us button if you'd like to meet with Jake and his team.